Welcome back to One by One. This week we'll look at the exciting or maybe terrifying issue of door knocking. And when you think about door knocking, can I ask you as a group just to share your thoughts on door knocking, be they positive, negative, uncertain. Take some time to share your thoughts and then come back and we'll continue on. Now, when we go door knocking, we need to think about our strategy and the how of door knocking. Can I encourage you to work in pairs as you go door knocking, just for your safety and for your protection, and so that if there is an occasion or an incident that happens, then there are at least two people there as a witness. As you come up to a door, you walk along the streets, as you come up to a particular house or door, take a note of the surroundings. Have a look at what's happening in the yard and on the doorstep that you're at. If you see toys scattered around the yard, then there are kids present. Use that so you can talk about the children's programs, for example, in your church. Have a look at the shoes that are on the doorstep. It will tell you something about what's going on. I went to a door once and there was about 15 pairs of large shoes in the shoe rack. Now immediately I thought to myself, this house has a lot of people, probably a lot of teenagers. And as it turned out, there were 6 teenagers living in the house. We were able to talk about youth group and all the things our church did in youth group and for that particular age group. Have a look at the state of the yard. Do these people need help? Is there sickness in the family? Is there a way the church can reach out to that family? Have a look at the blinds. If the blinds are down and all the windows are closed and the place is locked up, maybe the person is on shift work and the time that you're knocking is not appropriate. And if you draw someone out of bed, they're half asleep, they're not going to be real happy. So it might be wise or prudent to move on very quickly without waking people up. Before you go door knocking, you need to familiarise yourself with the material that you're giving out. Is it an invite to a church function? When's the function? Where's the function? What's the point of the function? You need to know all these things off by heart so you can talk about them freely as you knock on the door. And so you come up to a house, you knock on the door. At that point, I like to take a step backwards so you're not in the person's face. So take a step back. As the person opens up the door, you can introduce yourself and your church. So you say, hi, I'm Essa. I'm from the local Presbyterian church. I'm here too, but we'll get onto that in a moment. There is a debate going about whether or not you should use your denominational tag. Now, personally, over the years of door knocking, I've found it's a very helpful thing to use because people know the major denominations and they are safe. And immediately people know you're not those religious freaks that come knocking on your door every weekend. And it puts people at ease and it puts them in a positive frame of mind. I have never had a negative reaction to the word Presbyterian. And once we did an experiment. We were knocking on about 3,000 doors. One group used the word community church, one group used the title Presbyterian. And interestingly, those who used the word Presbyterian had a much better reception than those who didn't. And so you need to decide that, but being Presbyterian is a good thing, certainly not a negative thing. Now, as you knock on the door, you introduce yourself. If you can pay a genuine compliment to the person, that always works well. You don't want to get sidetracked. But for example, I've seen people with lovely gardens, and I say, look, you've got a beautiful garden, you must be very talented at gardening. It just sets the mood into some positive. So if you can pay them a genuine compliment, do that. But also, you need to tell the person why you're bothering them as soon as practical. You don't want to drag the conversation on without them knowing why you're there. So you pay them a compliment and you move into the reason that you're there very quickly. Now that will create a reaction, either positive or negative. They may not want anything to do with you. You can deal with that in a very positive way, but your goal is to dialogue with the person, to talk to them, to engage in discussion. The more they talk, the better off you'll be. The less they talk, the harder it gets. And so you might use relevant questions. All of those spiritual conversation techniques that we talked about in our last session. So as you knock on the door, you might be inviting people to church for a particular service. You say, look, I'm Essa, I'm from the Presbyterian Church around the corner. We'd love to invite you to this church event. You give it to them, and they say, oh, look, I'm not interested. And so you might respond with, oh, wow, have you had a bad experience at church? They say, no, I just don't believe in Jesus. Say, wow, can I ask you why you don't believe? And you start a conversation. You're not there to grade them. You're not there to judge them. You're not there to browbeat them. But you start talking and you dialogue. Now, I had a guy at the door a couple of years back. He was adamant that he didn't believe in Jesus. He was adamant that he hated all religion. And as we talked, I was able to say, look, I've got this great book. It was a book on proving the reality of Christ. And I said, can I give you this book to read? I didn't have it with me, so I had to take it back. I said, can I give you this book to read? And because we talked for about 3 to 5 minutes, he said, look, leave it on my doorstep. I'll be away for a few days. And he took it and he read the book. So as you engage in dialogue, people let their guard down. And as they let their guard down, they're more likely to be responsive. And so you should always have something, an invite, a newsletter, whatever it is, to leave with that person for a later reference. And you know, as you're talking, you give it to them, you tell them about it, and most people are happy to take something. What they do with it is not our business. It's something we can't control. We simply leave it with them. Now, we thank them for their time and we wish them well, be it for the day or for whatever it is. But and then as we're leaving, we need to decide if a follow-up is needed. Now, if follow-up is needed, you've got to take down the address and any contact names that you have, and the church can follow them up. But what if? What if you run into difficult people? Now, I've met Mr. Aggressive or Mrs. Aggressive at the door many, many times. Rule number 1 is do not engage in arguments or debates with that person. You don't want to end up with that situation where they're standing firm in their point of view and you're trying to engage them or headbutt them with your particular point of view. It never works, it never helps, it's never productive. So refuse to debate, refuse to argue, refuse to get engaged in that ploy. And tell them politely, look, I'm not here to argue, I'm not here to debate with you, just to promote the church and to invite you along, or to leave you a Bible or a tract or whatever it is. Now, if they're adamant, look, I don't want to talk, just say, look, I really appreciate your time. Thanks heaps, have a nice day, and move on to the next house. The worst thing you can do is argue with them or try to override them with your beliefs. It really won't help. Just thank them and move on to the next house. What about if you get Mrs. Talkative, who wants to talk about everything but the reason you're there? And again, some people are so thrilled to have a visitor that they will talk and talk and talk. You need to look for key words. You need to listen intently and steer the conversation back to the topic. The topic is the reason you're there at the door promoting the church, be it to share the gospel, be it to invite them to something, or just to leave them a particular invite or newsletter. Now, as you steer the conversation back and complete the reason you're there, the conversation you want to have, and really thank them for their time and move on to the next house. But what about the person, and we've seen a lot of people during our door knocking who said they've been hurt by the church and will never go back. It's right and fitting that you apologise for the church's behaviour, even if it's not your church. I'm sorry that's really happened to you, that's tragic. Empathise with them, empathise with their situation, but never bag the church. Even if it's not your church or your denomination, never ever put the church down. Don't share your own hurt story, because you don't want to start a comparison. My story's worse than yours, my story's better than yours. And you don't want the other person to feel like they're being compared to you. They're hurt. They're suffering from something that happened in church. Empathise, apologise, but don't bag the church and don't share your story. If it's appropriate, you can talk about God's healing and God's forgiveness. You can talk about the love of God if that's relevant. You can invite them to church. Again, if it's relevant, you've got to play it by the specific situation. And you can even offer to have the minister of the church or the elder of the church visit them and pray with them or talk through the hurt that happened. And from there, you have to play it by ear depending on what happens. But again, you thank them for their time. After the conversation, if possible, leave them with material and move on. If they want to have a visit, take down a name, take down the address and pass it on to the elders and minister of your church. You also need to be careful of difficult situations. Never put yourself in a dangerous situation. So if you are door knocking alone and someone invites you in, really you should never go in. If you're in pairs, that's a situation you have to call, but it is always safer to stay on the doorstep and to talk through the screen or with the open door, but never to go inside. If there's a scary dog in the yard, don't go in the yard. Don't put yourself in a dangerous situation. In that case, you can just leave something in the letterbox and call back later or wait for them to contact you. Now, door knocking is easy. Door knocking is the easiest form of evangelism you can have. It takes very little preparation. It takes comparatively little time. And from that preparation time to execution of the event is a very small interval. So you get your material, you get out there, and you're actually dealing with non-Christians face to face. Now, the negative side or the hard side is it actually forces you to think on your feet. It forces you to have answers at the ready and to be able to talk on the run. But with a little bit of practice, you'll get that very quickly. So let's do some reflection. Let's think about this. And again, once you've spent time in reflection, close your cell group with a round of prayer. Number one, why is door knocking so scary for so many believers? Why is it so scary? Number two, list the pros and cons of door knocking. List as many as you can, positives and negatives. Thirdly, think about a time when your cell could actually go out door knocking. When's a good time for your group to get out there and bang on doors and talk to people? And finally, someone once said, with door knocking, timing is everything. With door knocking, timing is everything. Reflect on that statement. Think about it, pull it apart, analyse it, and discuss it, and share your thoughts on it. As you finish reflection, close your time in prayer, and we'll see you